I can convince myself at any time that I am in my prime. And what I do is I wake up in the morning and I say, I am as young as I am ever going to be again. And I'm the wisest that I have ever been in my life. And if I can convince myself that I am the smartest, wisest because of the information that I have, and I'm the youngest that I'm ever going to be at this point on, boom, I'm in my prime. Right. And it kind of resets me into thinking, not only enjoy this moment more than maybe I was, or maybe stop complaining about the thing or the challenge that I'm dealing with. It's just like, hey, you are in your prime. And also it helps me drop into the present moment and really be grateful for this moment in time that I have. And I know everybody says, we're going to think back one day on like the good old days. And sometimes I just be like, man, we are living the good old days like right now. And let's try to like enjoy this moment as much as we can and maximize. And, obviously we still have obligations and we still have responsibilities and stuff, but like within that, hey, we're in our prime right now. Let's enjoy it.
Brett, we are such kindred spirits. I'm so excited for this conversation. I think you and I both believe in doing difficult things, which creates an easier and happier life. So I can't wait for this.
Thank you. I appreciate you having me on. And Lawrence, this is going to be a great conversation, brother.
Brett, can we maybe start with a little bit of your background? I know you've been helping a lot of people as a coach, and you're very, put together, and you seem like a smooth finished product. I'd love to hear almost, about the early years and how you came to be, the person you are today as well.
Yeah, pardon the smile for the smooth finished product, because that feels very, very unorthodox for me to hear and to say. But I appreciate you, and I appreciate you saying that. Yeah, my background, I started in the fitness industry. Actually, I went to college for exercise science, and was really in love with sports and wanting to stay close to sports and things like that. And came out of college, worked in all things fitness for about 8 years, and then really fell in love with the psychology of coaching. And without even really trying, it kind of naturally happened that I started taking some of my fitness clients and coaching them in what I called the other 23 hours of their life. I knew that they were coming to me for fitness, but what I really wanted to unpack and start to put together was the puzzle of what made somebody tick, what made them inspired, motivated, disciplined, undisciplined, stressed, unstressed. I wanted to kind of figure that out with each person. And in doing so, I really started to fall in love with that process. And the clients that I was working with, all of a sudden the fitness side became much easier when we focused on some of these other pain points in their life. And that led to referrals to working with husbands and wives and coworkers and come speak to my company. And next thing I know, I was calling myself a coach and really kind of stepping into this performance coaching, high performance coaching. And that led to more speaking. And today I have my first book published, which I'm super excited about, that just came out recently. And I do a lot of professional speaking. So it's been an evolution. And as much as it may sound, connected, disconnected, I have always felt like I was going to be somebody who was going to live multiple different lives and do different things. And I've always struggled to be like, hey, Brett, you're going to do this for the next 10 years, this same thing every day. I always struggled with that. So it's not surprising to me that I've changed and evolved over time.
Well, Brett, that's the arc of a successful life, right? As you grow as a person, your roles and the things you're doing are going to grow. And I really love the fact that you came from fitness, and I've been in the fitness world and athletic world my whole life. And I talk to a lot of trainers. I have a lot of friends who are personal trainers, and they talk about that frustration. You mentioned it, the other 23 hours of the day. They say, if he can train really hard, my client, he can do everything I tell him to, but if his diet is just garbage and he's not sleeping well and he's not going to recover and his hormones are all screwed up, I can't really help him. So in order to really help people, whether it's a trainer or my wife's a therapist, as a therapist, you have to have the whole picture. So I really like the fact that you bring everything together.
Yeah, there's a lot of modalities, and I think there is a place for all of them. I'm not the kind of guy that you're ever going to come to, and I'm going to say this is the one way. No, this is the one way that works. Even my book, I feel like there are multiple books that could help. I'm hoping to help a very specific type of person with that. But I think that when you look at it from a 360 view, it becomes a little bit more obvious how they're all connected. And I think that the people that do connect the dots not only live a much more aligned life, but I think the fulfillment comes from that identification of, hey, I am who I say I am, or, I am a fit person. And because I'm fit, I show up differently in my relationships. And when I'm showing up differently in my relationships, I'm happier and healthier. So I think that they work all, back and forth together. And the people who struggle with one, maybe somebody out there who's listening, follows you because or listens to your podcast because they struggle with the fitness and they're trying to learn from you, or they're struggling with mindset and they're trying to learn, is I think that when you connect the dots, it becomes easier to follow through in the buckets. For instance, a lot of clients have never, before they, have either started working with me or heard some of the things I said, they've never connected the dots that if I get healthier, they think it's only going to help health. But if they start to say, well, if I get healthier, I'm more confident. If I'm more confident, I'm more happy. If I'm happy, I'm probably going to be a better partner or a better father, husband, wife. If they say, if I get healthier, well, I'll probably have better energy. If I show up at work with better energy, I'll probably have better output. If I have better output, I may make more money. And the people who start to adopt this kind of 360 lifestyle, and I'm by no means am I saying I'm perfect, but I have always connected the dots, and connecting the dots has allowed me to stay more disciplined in both areas because I see the connection. And if I slack in one, it could also mean, sometimes you start to slack in others.
That's so true. One thing I love about my wife is she never complains when I take time to do jiu-jitsu. I take time to hang out with friends. I want to have a boys' weekend somewhere, go hiking, because she knows that it makes me a happier, more fulfilled person. Then I'm going to be a better husband. Then I'm also going to be a better father to our son. So it's like connecting the dots is so important. And so I feel like we live in a world which is people look at things in isolation too much, and taking a step back. I think whenever I'm having a tough time with something, if I go outside at night, I live in the country, so I actually see the stars, and it's a clear night and I see the stars. Immediately for me, it just brings me back to the idea that everything in my life it's in 10 years, there's something that's bothering me. It's probably not going to matter. Therefore, I'm going to be okay. Taking that step back and having perspective. And it's the same with when we're aligning goals. So many times we're so focused on short-term goals. But if you take a step back, I was talking to this coach the other day, and he was saying he works in 21-year intervals. And I was like, man, that's my kind of guy. I'm an incredibly long-term planner. I'm not interested in something next week or next month. I want to spread things out and I want to grow, the rest of my life. I'm 46. So I love that idea of just taking a step back, trying to see the whole big picture, connect the dots. And that's probably the key to fulfilling your potential in life.
See, I love different perspectives, and that's why I think the best speakers in the world are the ones who can also shut their mouth and listen, and the best coaches are the ones who know how to be students. I have always gravitated actually towards like a shorter game. Like I have always gravitated, back when the coach used to make us run and stuff, I would always hate the mile, but hey, I'll do as many sprints as you want me to do. Just don't make me run long distance, please. So I love hearing from people who say, hey, like the longer goal, the better, or the more disciplined you can stay, or the more it focuses. Because I've always struggled, and I don't know if that's a personal thing, but I've always struggled with anything longer where, for me, if you say, Brett, in 2 years, we're going to accomplish this, or 3 years, I like having the vision, but I also struggle to make today matter. I am a master negotiator with myself. And I have always found that, like, hey, if I can talk myself out of today, I'll start tomorrow, or like, I'll start this thing. And I found that I'm not alone in that. And because of that, I've had to set up environments and create almost ways to prevent myself from outsmarting myself and really trying to keep everything. So I like 90-day sprints, and 90 days feel short enough that today is urgent, but long enough that in 90 days, it's a realistic snapshot of life. I'm probably going to have some sort of work travel. I'm going to have, there's going to be a holiday. There might be a birthday or so. Like there's going to be a realistic time frame. So if I can stay consistent in 90 days and repeat that cycle, that helps me hit my long-term goals. So I have a phrase that, a year is a long time, but any long-term goal is broken up into a lot of short games. So if you can win a lot of the small games, short games, you can win a lot of your long-term goals.
Right. So just to clarify, I do believe in every day doing the important things. And I think over time, they kind of, what's the expression? We always underestimate what we can do in 1 year. overestimate, but we underestimate what we can do in 10 if it's years stacked on top of each other.
Totally.
And I do believe I have all my daily non-negotiables. But I guess the reason I've really been thinking about this recently a lot is when I'm 46, and in my 20s, I had incredible success. I made a lot of money. I was moved to the US. I was doing very well with I had a good social network. I was traveling. I was meeting young ladies. I won the Chicago Golden Gloves. I was doing everything in my sport. And I felt like everything came to me. I worked very hard, but I had all this success. And then in my 30s, I had a lot of ups and downs. And I realized and now in my 40s, I heard someone say, wherever you are in life, it's not your objective position that gives you happiness. It's the idea of humans are a comparison species. And we don't just compare ourselves to other people, we also compare ourselves to where we were. So by having all that success I had in my 20s, it made my 30s very challenging because I'd already been to the top of several mountaintops. And then suddenly I lost a whole bunch of money trading, and I got to restart my career in my mid-30s and all these things. And it was very challenging. I think it was more challenging because I had this success up front. So I heard someone say, we're very impatient to get to where we want to be. But if you want to maximize happiness, you actually want to spread it out over a long, long time. That way, you're always progressing, and humans are naturally happiest when we're improving, not when we've necessarily arrived. And I thought that was such an interesting idea, and it definitely applies to my own life. The idea of we're impatient, right? People like you and I, we want to get the goal and tick the box and feel like we've achieved what we set out to do. But in terms of having a life where you maximize happiness, you actually want to spread things out over a really long time. So that's just a real new idea where I've started to look at things where every time I feel myself getting impatient, I just think, look forward to achieving it and push it down the road a little bit, because I know when I achieve it, there's always that natural come down.
I love that, Lawrence. I think that's a great perspective, especially anybody listening. Really, you sum that up in like, what is the key to happiness? I feel like it's progress. It can be as simple as making progress. And that's something that I've really started to dig deep into now. And I learned this working with clients. This is probably the one thing working with high performers that I didn't expect to learn was, do you have to climb to the top of your own mountain just to figure out that the happiness was really on the climb and not at the summit? Now, don't get me wrong. Like, you talked about winning the Golden Gloves, and there have been accomplishments throughout my life where like, hey, you like holding the trophy. You like, it feels good to do that. But I think so much of the joy is in the pursuit. And so much of the happiness is knowing that we are getting closer and closer to something that I think a lot of people delay their happiness. And this is where I don't want to talk out of both sides of my mouth, because I am a big believer in delayed gratification. And I think, the subtitle of my book is Why Choosing Easy is Making Your Life Hard. So there's a huge part of just delayed gratification. But I think that it can get out of whack also, and we could get it misaligned if we don't realize that, hey, one thing I don't want anybody to delay gratification on is happiness. How can we find that today and enjoy what we're in pursuit of? Yeah, get clear on what you want to pursue and make sure you're going after things that matter. That's all important. But I'm not a big believer in I will be happy when. Yes. Be careful with those statements, because I think it really steals a lot of joy from people. And then they get to that moment, whether it's the top of the mountaintop, selling the business, meeting the woman, or whatever it may be, and you're disappointed because that happiness is fleeting, when really you could have enjoyed so much more of it if you would have just enjoyed maybe the day-to-day or the week-to-week a little bit more.
That's so true. One thing I've noticed with a lot of people that have achieved unbelievable success and they're at the top of their whatever mountaintop they were climbing, is they look back at the time when they were kind of in the trenches and grinding and struggling and broke and not sure if they can keep going before they have to give up on their dreams. They actually look back at that period with fondness. And the same with me. When I was fighting professionally, some of my training days were so hard. I used to wake up and the first thing I would just lie in bed thinking, oh my God, how am I going to get through this day? This is going to be so miserable. I can't wait to get this day over, get this fight over, whatever it is. And now in my office, I have a photo of those years, and it's of me with some blood on my face in the corner, and some rounds between a fight. And I look at it all the time, and I think, oh my God, they were the best times. Like, oh, I was a young lion, and I was chasing my dreams, and it was so amazing. And so I remember that now. So whenever something's kind of irritating me, I know that in the future, even if it annoys me today, I'm going to look back with some kind of nostalgia at that. And it's sort of like the perfect example is I have a 4-year-old who's a wonderful boy, and he's turned I'm a kind of a neat guy. My wife's kind of tiny too, but he turns my house, he's a tornado going through the house, and I'm stepping on his toys, I'm tripping over things, and things are a mess. And I always think there's going to be a time when he's left home and my house is beautiful, and I'm going to miss all his shit everywhere, tripping over things.
Yeah.
So it's a great thing to help. I'm always trying to find these little hacks, trying to find happiness. Because one thing, Brett, and I'm not sure, and we're going to talk about your book soon, but I'm not sure how much you talk about the distinction between success and happiness, because that's something that it took me 2 decades of adulthood to finally realize just the last few years ago is they're very different things. I always thought the success, the happiness would automatically follow. And now I realize that you have to consciously choose to be happy. And you kind of mentioned it just then, that you have to choose to be happy in the small things. But I also believe in big goals. So I think on the way to the big goals, you just have to enjoy those little steps and every day, the small little things every day.
Yeah. So 2 things I want to touch on here is, first of all, it's so refreshing to hear you talk about your son and the chaos, but knowing that you're going to miss it. My wife and I are expecting our first child, a boy, in December, so I'm over the moon. And I'll tell you, I've never focused more on like dads, and just every dad that I get, I'm like, what nugget can I steal from this dad? What can I gain from this? And the best advice I've gotten is, you talk to somebody who has a newborn or a 1-year-old, 2-year-old, and they're just in the chaos, right? They're like, man, I got no sleep. I'm running this way. I'm going crazy. And they're in the chaos, and they're kind of almost can't wait to get out of that phase. And you talk to somebody who has a 4-year-old, or even somebody who maybe has teenagers that are growing up, and they just wish they could go back and be more present in those moments and then appreciate them and be so great. So to me, that is very much chasing success, right? It's like, hey, we just want to get out of this phase and get to the next thing and celebrate the next win. And then we look back and, the picture of you with the blood on your face, people would be like, man, that was the fun times for him. Yeah. It's when you're in the grind and you're in the moment and you're chasing and you're in pursuit and you're just like excited. That's the thing, that maturity, you grow up. And I'm 38, so I'm just a couple years behind you. And the same, it's like there are things I even find myself either complaining about. And I was just having this conversation today, complaining about something, and I almost had to like immediately snap myself out of it. And I was like, man, Brett 5 years ago would be dying to be in this moment right now, complaining about this thing that I'm dealing with. Like, what? We're dealing with that? How cool is that? So that little shift of perspective, looking in the rearview mirror, I think really changes a lot. To go back to your question of success and happiness, I think success and fulfillment are very different. And I think that is where even the process of writing the book and now, speaking on it is, I'm really leaning into this concept of defining your own success. And I think it's so important because fulfillment will follow whatever we decide to pursue. And I think a lot of times we get caught up looking left and looking right and seeing what success looks like over there and who has success here and who's ahead of me. And, social media can play a part in this. And we end up chasing. We want success so badly, whether that's more money, more this, a better car, a better life, a better whatever it is. And I'm not telling anybody to not be successful, but I would rather people double down and get really clear on what they want and why they want it. Because to me, that's where fulfillment is going to play a part. We might have all the success in the world, but I'm sure we both know people who on paper are the most successful people we've ever met, but why aren't they happy? Why aren't they feeling fulfilled? Why, like, they have it all. How could they not be happy? And a lot of times it's because we've chased something down, either at the sacrifice of something else, or we chase something down, we get there and we're like, why did I even want this? This isn't what fulfillment looks like for me. So to my message to your listeners are really, before we can have success, we really got to ask ourselves, why do we want it? What do we want it for? And then go get it. Like, I'm not saying don't go get it. Go chase it. Go climb the mountain. But to me, fulfillment will follow that. And if we chase something down, it takes just as much energy to chase something down that we want as it is to chase something down and realize we never really wanted it in the first place.
I love that. And I actually think being happy is a skill that you have to constantly develop. And I think I wrote a post on my Instagram a couple of weeks ago, and it was talking about how I'm 10 times happier today than I was 10 years ago. But 10 years ago, maybe on paper, I had a more impressive resume. I don't know.
Mhm.
But it's that idea of you can find happiness, especially in this day of where we're overstimulated and a lot of people are overworked and they don't get enough exercise and their mind is racing too much or they're taking too much SSRIs or whatever the situation is. It's easy to feel inundated and not appreciate the really small things. But there's so many things we can do every single day where we can actually appreciate them. That enjoying that, first sip of coffee if you're a coffee lover, or I hear my son giggle as a parent. I get all these pleasures, from him. But also things, small things. The fact that my phone is off and we're having this conversation and thinking about all these different ideas, like that's a huge pleasure for me. And I think you have to slow down and you have to consciously appreciate all those small pleasures every day, and then that just makes you so much happier.
Yeah, drop it into the present. The one thing that we cannot multitask is being present in a world that rewards us for how good we can multitask and how much can you get done at the same time. And all of that, it always brings me back to the moments that I remember the most. If you were to ask me right now, and it's September, if you were to say, Brett, what are the best moments that you've had this year? None of them are in front of my phone. I'll tell you that. None of them were in front of a screen. They're all moments where I was either connecting outside with somebody I love, sharing a moment, sharing an experience. So it's so funny that I feel obligated to respond to the text message or obligated to get back to that email or obligated to, don't miss out on this opportunity. Yet, at the end of my year, the things that I hang my hat on and the things that I will remember as the best parts of the year are none of those things. So it's this balancing act that I think we play of, well, okay, part of my career is going to be, pursuing things and responding to emails. I have to do some of those things, but don't lose sight of the moments that actually make life great and that I'm probably going to enjoy, or exactly what you said, the small everyday things that we could glance over and miss if we're not paying attention.
So, Brett, I'm going to talk a little bit about parenthood because I'm so
Yeah,
excited.
please.
Firstly, I'm very passionate about this because I went through it. And I remember when I was at your stage where my wife was a couple months of away from giving birth, I had this idea, and I think a lot of it was subconscious, is when I was pre-dad, I would do all these cool things and I would get these little comments from friends with kids. And they would say things like, oh, it must be nice to have the free time to do that. Or, oh, enjoy it now. That's all going to end. So I had all these subconscious things coming in. And I really thought that my life was over to a large degree. And I didn't understand. I didn't know what I didn't know. And that's the happiness that I get from it. But also the fact that I'm sure you're very proud. You just published your book. It's got all your ideas on trying to live an amazing life. And we're going to get to that soon too. But the idea of anything you're proud of is not easy. And yes, the first 3 months, the first 6 months, sometimes the first year kind of sucked. That, lack of sleep is not great. You're kind of adjusting to this new world. You don't get much time to yourself. Everything revolves around keeping this little baby alive. But then every year it gets more fun and you're getting the feedback back from him. And I think, so I remember my wife gave birth. I couldn't see my son for 2 days because it was during COVID. When she went in to give birth, she tested positive. They kicked me out of the room. It was actually pretty traumatic. She's crying, pushed me out of the room. They shut the door. And then she's texted me. They said, you have to get in, you have to wait 24 hours, then get a negative test before you can pick me up. So I missed the birth, which I'm still a little bit bitter of. But I had 48 hours basically just with my feelings, like feeling this sadness that I was happy, of course, to be a father, but I had this sadness that a lot of the things that I enjoyed in life, the striving for greatness of my own, fulfilling my own potential, was over. And I went for this really long run on the Chicago lakefront. And I remember thinking to myself after, I felt really good. I got all the endorphins. And I was like, why does my life have to be over? Why do I have to stop doing cool things? And that's been my experiences. Of course, the first few months are tough. But then once you get into your routine, I think my wife and I live a wonderful life. I live in the Midwest still. I moved to Northwest Indiana, but we have all these goals. Like I want to go to Italy. I want to buy an old house and restore it and have a few years with my son in Italy. My wife's in the Philippines. We want to go to the Philippines and buy and rehab a resort there so her family can have something to help us run. And I wanted to, he's inspired me to live a very unusual life to fulfill my potential. And he's given me so much happiness. And the best thing about people like you and I is that we've spent a lifetime working on ourselves, and everything we've done to improve ourselves is in a roundabout way going to make us a better dad. It's going to give us more wisdom to share with him. We're going to be a good example for him. So it's given me, I thought that the whole dad bod thing, like, oh, I'm going to lose my motivation now, I'm a father. But actually, I find myself infinitely more inspired. So he's not only giving me inspiration, he's giving me happiness. And it's just that there's this narrative that like life is over. Like it's a very negative, I guess, I don't know if it's just for me or if it's out there with a lot of other people, but I had a very negative connotation because I was an older dad. I thought I had pushed off parenthood for a long time because I thought as soon as I'm a parent, I can't do all the things I love. And of course, some of the things I love change. But the fact of the matter is, parenting, I think, is one of the hardest things you'll do. But everything I'm proud of in my life was hard. And I'm just more proud of that than anything else. So I just wanted to share that perspective with you because I know that I went through it myself where I was pretty depressed as a new dad. I remember just being depressed. And you have this thing where you almost feel like a sham because everyone's like, oh, congratulations. And you just don't feel it. I was depressed inside. I was thinking my life's over. The fun was over. So I just wanted to share that personal story.
Lawrence, I appreciate you so much, brother, for that. And those are the kind of stories where maybe 5 years ago I would have been like, oh, cool. Yeah. Like, yeah, I'm sure. Like, but because I'm so close to it, they mean so much to me to hear things like that. And, I know we live in a world of influence and a lot of people have influence over us. And I've really not just this past year, but leading up to this journey, my wife and I have had an interesting journey getting pregnant and getting to this point, and like it's been a ride, and it does make me appreciate it so much more. But I also think stepping into this new chapter, I have a thicker filter on who I take advice from. And I think so often we see somebody who has a lot of money or who's very successful, and we take advice from that person. And then we go over here for fitness and we take advice from that person. And then we go over here with investing and we take advice from that person. I really kind of adopted this motto of like the AND, and what that means is when it comes for me to take advice from somebody, I want to see somebody who is passionate about their career, their business, and is also fit. Because if you're fit and you're passionate about, well, now you have what I actually want. Like that's the version of success that I want. I want somebody who is a dad and who also takes care of themselves. And like, not that they're selfish, but they're also making themselves a priority, because to me, that's what it looks like to be a really successful dad. So I appreciate you sharing that, because you are a role model in a lot of ways, from how you take care of yourself and the fact that you still run your business and you still have all these things going on. And you can speak so intelligently on the importance of still having your own passions for your son, not, to take away from that, but to have that, because that's very much, I know it's going to be an adventure and I'm going to have to learn on the fly, and there's only so much preparation you can have. But, my wife and I both run our own businesses, and we're very, passionate, and we've tried to have conversations about how important it is that we still have our own lives while we are now responsible for this human being that relies on us almost solely in the beginning. I don't know the right blueprint. I've been trying to pick up pieces as I go, but I really do appreciate you sharing that perspective, because it is very meaningful for me, and it means a lot to hear that there is ways to do it out there. And yeah, like a lot of those feelings of the freedom and being able to be like, hey, I'm going to go hit the whatever, see it, like, and just walking out the doors, like, is going to be completely different, knowing that now the responsibility, shifts back and forth. So I really appreciate you sharing that with me.
Oh, my pleasure. Yeah, the idea of what is success, and of all the metrics, the easiest one to measure, because it's just numbers, is financial, and it's so easy to get caught up in that. And I had this wonderful moment. So my friend just built a house on Lake Michigan. So it's actually quite. People think I'm there all the time this summer. I've been there all the time with my son, and my wife comes sometimes, and I've been enjoying it so much, just enjoying the Midwest summer. And but it's 50 minutes drive, so I'll work a full day. I'll get back to my house at 4 o'clock, and I'll be there at 4:50 with my son, and we'll hang out till sunset. We'd be really maximizing the summer here. And I was there, and I've been using my friend's paddleboard, and I've been loving paddleboarding. My son will play on the beach. He entertains himself. He makes friends. It's great. And I'll just paddleboard around, checking on him. And so one day I see this guy with an inflatable paddleboard. So he's an older guy. I start chatting to him, and he's telling me, yeah, I'm having trouble now. I'm 83 and I'm having real trouble with my balance. So I still go on it, but I'm really struggling. And he kind of made a comment like, enjoy your youth. And then I get chatting to him a bit more. It turns out he was at the Chicago Board of Trade for 40 years. He had 3 clearing companies. He's talking about this. I'm like, oh, he's a pretty wealthy guy. Then he starts talking about the crypto he invested in. And I'm kind of doing the math in my head. And I was like, sounds like he's pretty much a billionaire here. And then we're talking a bit more. And it will be so easy. If I was my younger self going through, so I've had some big ups and downs. I've been a multimillionaire before I was 30, and then I've been completely broke in my mid 30s. I've had a lot of ups and downs financially. I could easily look at someone like him and think, oh, I'd be so jealous of all his riches and the fact that he never has to worry about money again. And yet he's there telling me, I would give all of this to be young and have my life in front of me and have all these great adventures to come. And that was just such a good reminder to me that I do believe I'm very passionate about money. I'm very passionate about financial literacy. And, I help people buy investment properties and get tax write-offs. And I'm very fond about Bitcoin and decentralized currency. I love all that stuff. I come from a financial background. I think it's important to have a great life is not to have money stress. I also know that having a lot of money, if you're miserable broke, you're going to be miserable as a multimillionaire. Like that's just, it's not going to, if you can use money as a tool, it could be fantastic, but it's not going to make you happy. But it was such a nice reminder chatting to him that it's so easy to take all the good things in your life. And then the one aspect you have someone that's killing it in that one aspect and be kind of envious of them because you wish you had that. And it's so easy, especially today, so many people are struggling with high, inflation and everything's so expensive and that they're struggling to pay the bills. It's so easy to look at someone with, an abundance of wealth and be jealous and think that they've got it all figured out. But that's just one of the small pieces of the puzzle. And, I wouldn't trade my son for all the billions in the world, So it's like, that's the one. The other thing is when you're going to have your boy, you realize that you have the most important piece of the puzzle and everything else is just a bonus. That's been a real beautiful thing that I'm still working on. I'm still realizing I'm trying to work every day on achieving my goals and pushing myself and achieving my potential, but also working every day on being happier because I know that when we're older, I'm going to give everything back to be the person I am today. So when I'm 65, if I wake up and I'm like, my body hurts, I would give anything to be 45. Or 46. I can wake up today and complain that my back's not the same as it was when I was 25, but that's just wasted energy. So I'm really trying just to be more appreciative every day. And it's made a huge difference. That conscious effort has made a huge difference in my happiness level.
Yeah, I think I love that story. And you're so right about the people that are age specifically is something that you can look back on and you would trade it all, right? You would trade almost anything for youth, and especially to still be, to be our age, to still be healthy, to still be fit, to still be able to do a lot of the things that we want to do. In my mind, what you're saying is happiness and fulfillment are a daily practice, not this destination that we set out to be. And something, a little motto that, people may find funny, but it works for me is if I ever wake up and I'm, doubting something or complaining again about an injury or something being like this, is I can convince myself at any time that I am in my prime. And what I do is I wake up in the morning and I say, I am as young as I am ever going to be again. And I'm the wisest that I have ever been in my life. And if I can convince myself that I am the smartest, wisest because of the information that I have, and I'm the youngest that I'm ever going to be at this point on, boom, I'm in my prime, right? And it kind of resets me into thinking, not only enjoy this moment more than maybe I was, or maybe stop complaining about the thing or the challenge that I'm dealing with. It's just like, hey, you are in your prime. And also it helps me drop into the present moment and really be grateful for this moment in time that I have. And I know everybody says, we're going to think back one day on like the good old days. And sometimes I just be like, man, we are living the good old days like right now. And let's try to like enjoy this moment as much as we can and maximize. And, obviously we still have obligations and we still have responsibilities and stuff, but like within that, hey, we're in our prime right now. Let's enjoy it.
I love that. And I think that's actually the secret to life is balancing the obligations and the things you have to do with the other things that you want to do and the things that give you happiness. But I can see it behind you, your book. I love the fact you talk about uncomfortable either way. I think I saw a great picture, and it was someone eating a bunch of junk food and said, like, you can either have short-term pleasure now, or someone that's sacrificing, they're eating clean, they're working out, or you can have the pleasure later when you're healthy. And I'm a big believer in trade-offs in life. There's no free lunch. politicians will have you believe that vote for me, all your problems will go away and life will be perfect. And everything is trade-offs. Everything is, gray areas. And, you're sacrificing your time. Every time you say yes to something, you're saying no to something else. But I love that idea. Can you talk a little bit about when you kind of came up with the concept and said, I want to write a book on this? Because I really believe that it's a philosophy that I live my life by. And that's why I was so excited for this conversation.
Yeah, very similar. This title, and funny enough, when I came up with this title, the publishing company that I was working with, like they actually didn't like it. They were like, like we like it, but it's kind of vague and we don't know. And we tried to come up with all these other titles, and I just kept being like, that's the one that's on my heart. It's the one I believe in. I really believe that any decision I have or any conversation, I could kind of lead it back to uncomfortable either way. And for me, it's like when I look back at all the most influential or pivotal moments of my life, good or bad, some of them were amazing and everything went well, and some of them were like the hardest moments of my life. I really can always trace it back to this decision that I have, this fork in the road where for a lot of my life, it was, hey, this change that I say that I want, or this life that I want, or this, the health that I want, the money that I want, the lifestyle that I would like, all of those things. We can convince ourselves that all of those changes are going to be uncomfortable, right? We may have to change our environment. It may be uncomfortable to change what we're listening to, who we're hanging out with, our daily habits, our workout routine, what we're eating, all of those changes. And my whole take on it is, yeah, I'm not going to convince you that that's not going to be uncomfortable and that that's not going to be hard. But at the same time, knowing that there are these changes that we want to make, knowing that there's this potential inside of us that we're not untapping, knowing that we don't like the way we look when we look in the mirror, or knowing that we're not challenging ourselves or taking the risk to play life a little bit bigger, that's also uncomfortable. So what I'm trying to do with this title and, throughout the early parts of the book is really paint this picture for the reader to get them to understand you're not delaying, you're not avoiding the uncomfortable things in your life, you're just delaying them. And oftentimes they come back much bigger, much more drastic. And for a lot of people, the risk that they thought that they were avoiding really comes back as regret. So the book in general is really, trying to help people, adopt a little bit more risk in their life to reduce regret, but it is really to get them to question. And I'm a big curiosity guy. And I think that's one of the biggest traits that anybody can have to improve their life is just be more curious. Ask more questions. Is that the only way to do it? Am I really happy now? I'm saying that that's going to be hard, but is my life hard right now, not making that change? So that's really the where that title came from. And I just feel like it's funny enough, you write the book and, I wrote it 2 years ago and now it's out. And it's like I'm being tested by my own book because there's always these new uncomfortable either ways in my life. And it's like, I have sweatshirts and hats and things. And like the amount of times I don't want to go to the gym and here I am putting my hat on and I'm like, damn, it's staring me square in the face. Here we go. Uncomfortable either way. Let's make the hard decision that's going to pay off. So it's something I'm really passionate about. And I really want people to lean in. And I think the message can be really helpful for a lot of people.
Totally agree. I remember when I was young, I was an incredible hard worker. And I'd always think if I work hard now, my life will be easier as I get older. And now I realize that every single day up until my last day, hopefully if I still can, I want to do hard things at some point in the day because it will make the rest of my day easier. And so the easy thing to talk about is I love exercise, I love working out, but there's always resistance and it's always hard to, like yesterday, I had 2 friends in town. My wife was in Arizona. My 2 buddies are in town for the weekend. And my one buddy and I were both jiu-jitsu black belts. And there was like a holiday training day that day. And it was an hour drive away. And he really wanted to go. And I was like, bro, we could just go to the beach again. We're at the beach the day before with my son. Let's just do some paddleboarding. And he's like, bro, I know you want to go. Let's go. Let's just go and do it. And we do it. We have a real hard session and we both feel so great afterwards. And then we had a great rest of the day. And that's just a good example of, I remember having ex-girlfriends, they would say to me, oh, it's easy for you to work out, but it's not easy for me. And it's always so funny. Like it's so easy to see somebody else do things and think, oh, all the chips kind of fell in the right place and it was easy for them. But I've got all this resistance. It's hard for me. So I can't do what they're doing. But it's a great reminder for me that there's still daily resistance. After this, I'm going to go for a run. There's going to be a part of me that says, I can run tomorrow, but I'm going to force myself to go because I know that I'm going to feel so much better after it. Even though my legs are a bit sore, my lower back's a bit sore, and I've got 20 emails to get to, it's making those choices. And I really believe that that is the secret to life, is doing the difficult things early on in the day, and then you really get to enjoy the rest of the day. You got to earn the rewards. If you watch 8 hours of Netflix, you're going to have a miserable day. But if you watch an hour and a half at the end of an incredibly productive and hard day where you've ticked all the boxes of the things you wanted to do and you've enjoyed all the moments, you had a great time, and then you're relaxing, you're actually going to enjoy that infinitely more. So it's just that idea of, so many people think that if I work really hard today, I can get the gold watch on my retirement and just enjoy, drinking Mai Tais on the beach or something like that. But I've realized that that's not happiness. Happiness is doing things you want to do, but doing difficult things and challenging yourself every day for the rest of your life. And it's kind of a weird thing to get your head around. But now I really firmly believe that I'm going to try to live that life as best as I can.
Yeah, you nail it. It's when people see the cover of the book, a lot of times they're like, wait a minute, he wants me to live this life that's 24/7 uncomfortable. And no, not at all. That's not what I'm trying to say. But I do think we need to, in a life that has gotten to the point where we can choose comfort almost at every turn. There's always unhealthy food around. There's always an easy option. There's always a way to push something off to tomorrow. I mean, credit cards, right? We can swipe it now and not have to pay until later. There's all of these options that we can just push things off, that I think that it's even more more important and more vital that we find deliberate ways to embrace discomfort. And I think a daily workout is a great way to start with that. But it's finding these things of, no, I don't want your whole life to be uncomfortable. I want you to have I want you to have a lot of options, a lot of opportunities. I want parts of your life to be very easy. But in order to have those parts be easy, the parts that people really, really want, you're going to have to do some uncomfortable things. And I remember even back, when we played high school football, we would have this joke that if somebody wasn't working out hard in the gym, we had this phrase, we'd be like, oh, come on, soft hands. It was this phrase soft hands, oh, wait, you're not working hard enough. That person, must have these nice fresh hands that they didn't have to put the hard work in. And a buddy just said it to me recently and we cracked up laughing, thinking about it. But it is one of those things where that hard work that you put in, some of the calluses, whether they're mental calluses or physical calluses, those calluses are what build resilience. They're what builds skill. They're what builds strength. You putting in that work is what gives you opportunity on the back end of it. So the uncomfortable, the choosing hard now doesn't mean you're going to live a life 24/7 of hard. It means you're embracing these hard things so that I don't have the really uncomfortable regrets later in life, that I never got to see what my potential was like, that I never got to walk around in a really fit body and feel what that felt like, that I never got to provide for my family in a certain way. Those are the really uncomfortables that you look back on and you're like, man, not only do I regret that, but I don't even have the opportunity now to fix it, right? You talk about the guy on the older man on the paddleboard. He's like, yeah, you get to a certain point in your life and you can't just reverse your path and fix it. So I hope everybody understands that is hey, the uncomfortable either way is we have these decisions on a daily basis that we can make. And, you make enough of them and you get to choose your uncomfort as opposed to uncomfort being delivered to you. And you don't really have a lot of control over that.
Exactly. I think it was Tim Ferriss that said something along the lines of, the quality of your life is determined by the quality of difficult conversations you can have. And it's kind of that same principle as, I don't enjoy, there's a lot of work calls that I don't really enjoy doing. So I try to do them early on in the day and just get them all out of the way. And it's trying to, what they say, eat the frog first thing in the morning. It really does make your day better. I found, personally, I absolutely love the cold plunge because I'm not a morning person and I don't like getting in it. I don't like the cold. I love being out in the sun, and just by doing that in the morning, it's such a small thing. It's 3 minutes, but by doing something that I don't want to do and then getting out, it makes me so much happier. And then of course you have all the actual physical, the hormonal release of when your body gets out of really cold water, all the endorphins. It does actually make you much happier, but it's like a little tangible thing that you're doing that's comfortable early on in the day that makes all the rest of the day seem easier.
I'm with you. I am a warm guy. We moved to Miami specifically, so hey, give me more sun, less snow. But I agree with you that having those little benchmarks in your day, and for anybody who's listening who like has access to cold water or cold plunge, or like even put your face in a bowl, like those are great things. Another option that I'd throw in for the listeners is that was a huge one for me that for building momentum in my day was the snooze button. Was when my alarm went off. Is I used to be a habitual snooze button. 15 minutes, now 30 minutes, now 45, and the next thing you know, an hour's gone by, and half awake, half asleep for the last hour, getting crappy sleep, but at the same time, whatever I thought I was going to do in that hour is now shot, and now I'm rushing and doing those things. For somebody who really wants to start to build some positive momentum and also some discipline in your life, my suggestion would be like, let's work on the first challenge that you have every day, which is your snooze button. And what shifted for me is at first it was just this thing to dictate when I wake up. But when I reframed it as it's really the first commitment that you've made to yourself that day. The night before, you say, I'm going to wake up at X amount of time. And if you wake and the first thing that happens, your alarm goes off and you hit snooze, you are losing. You're 0-1, right? You've lost the first challenge and you've bailed on the first commitment of your day. So my challenge is, I don't care what time somebody wakes up. If but rather than your alarm going off at 6 and you snoozing to 7, just set it for 7. Set it for 7 and wake up when that first alarm goes off. And to me, if we can frame it as now I'm starting my day 1-0, and now whatever I said I'm going to wake up for, I already have momentum because I'm following through with myself. And it becomes this identity that I am who I say I am. And if I say that I'm going to, don't set your alarm for 6:30 if you have no intention of waking up at 6:30. And also sleep experts will actually say that like snoozing is the worst thing you can do because your body's getting in and out of like sleep cycles and you wake up groggy and you wake up like a disaster. You're better off just sleeping for 15 extra minutes. Boom. Alarm goes off, wake up, go attack your day. And for me, it's always been those little micro moments that, yes, it's uncomfortable. No matter summer, winter, whatever season you're in, no matter where you live, nothing is more comfortable than your bed. So I believe a great place to kind of adopt this uncomfortable either way is, hey, how can I get up right when my alarm goes off and start my day with something that is important to me, which for a lot of us is fitness, which it could be reading, it could be meditation, it could be just sipping your coffee and having, not a morning that's not rushed. So I'll throw the snooze button in there as a great place. And I talk about that, midway through the book as something that somebody else would see as small. But for me, it was a major turning point in starting to become the person that I always knew I could be. But that I just realized that the snooze button wasn't just a morning thing for me. And for somebody else listening, it might be the same. I started to realize there were all of these snooze buttons all over my life. Oh, that business that I'm going to start. Oh, snooze button. I'll start that next month. Oh, this fitness that I know that I'll do that next month. Oh, cleaning my apartment, whatever it might have been like next month. So you just start snoozing your whole life. And it's not just a button. It becomes more of a metaphor for how you're living.
Yeah, that's so true. I'm a huge believer in small things adding up and make a big difference. And I love what you said about be the person you say you're going to be. I never put that two and two together, but it's right. When you're in the evening and you're setting your alarm for the next day, you have an idea of how you're going to start the day. And by getting up and doing it, that's your first small win. And by snoozing, like you said, you're 0-1. When you were coaching all these people,
yeah,
what did you find were some of the common themes, like kind of roadblocks in them fulfilling their potential?
Yeah, great question. A couple of them. The first one would be confidence. And funny enough, you would think high performers, hey, you're doing a lot of things right. You must be very confident. But I found that confidence is this thing that no matter how little or how much you think you have, we can all benefit from it, right? We all can benefit from increasing our confidence. There's nobody who's like, nope, I've tapped out on confidence. I'm good. I don't need any more. There's always like levels of, hey, we can improve. So there's a couple things that I think will really help people with confidence. And one of them is exactly what we were just talking about is sticking to our word. And the thing that kills our confidence more than anything else is saying one thing and then acting in a different way, because it puts us out of alignment. And really one of the biggest frequencies that a human being can emit and like give off is authenticity. And if we are saying, hey, I'm going to, I wake up early and then I end up snoozing, or, hey, I do this thing, or I'm going to get fit because fitness is important to me, and then I keep bailing on it, we're out of authenticity. And if we're out of authenticity, that really starts to kill our confidence. No matter how much you think you can fake it in public, you know what's going on behind the scenes. So it starts to chip away at our confidence. Another thing that affects confidence is decision making. And surprisingly, there are a lot of high performers who really struggle with decision making. And I have this saying called quality decisions quickly. How do we make quality decisions quickly? And there's a couple different types of decision makers. There are people who like make quick decisions and just move forward. There are people who waffle back and forth. There are people who don't like to make decisions, and there are people who like try to make the perfect decision. And a lot of those, we end up trading a really good decision for no decision because we're looking for perfect. So making decisions is a really important one. And for somebody who normally takes, it takes me a week to make a decision, I will try to get that person to be like, hey, we got 3 days. And if it's a 3-day decision, how can we make it in 1 day? And if it's somebody who takes all day to make a decision, I'm like, I'm going to give you 30 minutes. How can we cut down on the time we make decisions? And I was just reading something recently about how it's not just about the decision that we make, but for a lot of people, instead of focusing so much on trying to make the right decision, try to make the decision right. Whatever you decide, make your next 2 or 3 steps in alignment with the decision that you just made. And what you'll find is you're not waffling back and forth. You're not even worried about what the other choices were, because I made this decision, and now for the rest of my day, I'm going to make sure that everything else aligns with that decision that I made. It's also a great way back to happiness and peace is if you're constantly second guessing yourself, forget the confidence conversation, because it's really difficult to have confidence if we're second guessing ourselves. But when we talk about happiness, when we talk about fulfillment, when we talk about being present, it is hard to be present if we're constantly thinking in the past about this decision that I should have made, or I should have, would have, could have. It's hard to do that. So, hey, make a decision. Don't worry if it's the perfect decision. Make the best decision you can, and then make your next 2 or 3 steps in alignment with proving that decision was the right one. And trust me, you'll not only have a lot more momentum, you'll move a lot faster, but your confidence will also be a ton higher.
That is really great advice. I think it's Cody Sanchez that talks a lot about the best of us make decisions fairly quickly. And I think if I bought a lot of property, but I've lived in 3 primary homes since I moved to the US 23 years ago. And all 3 of them I bought immediately. One of them was in a bidding war. I said I'll pay full asking straight away the first day I saw it. One of them I put an offer in without even seeing it, because I knew it was perfect for my wife. And one of them I just knew I wanted. And the broker at the time was like, I can't write this contract in good faith because we haven't seen more places. You got to at least see a few more places. And I was like, okay, to humor her, I'm 23 years old. I'm like, okay, I'll see a few more places. No, write the offer. And all 3 of them were great decisions. But I think learning the ability to trust, we know instinctually what is the right decision when it comes to a lot of these forks in the road, where kind of bigger life decisions, I guess. I feel like we really know, and it's easy for us to second guess ourselves. But I'm a huge believer in listen to your gut, listen to your intuition, because that's all of your conscious and subconscious wisdom all enrolled into one.
Yeah, you nailed it, Lawrence. If you look back on the last couple big decisions that anybody had, ask yourself, did your intuition, did your gut know the decision before you actually made it? Most people will say yes. Most people, whether you made the right decision or wrong decision, if I look back on my last couple bad decisions, I will also say my gut knew that I shouldn't have made that decision, right? My gut was pointing me somewhere else and I went against it. But I will say that the people who learn to trust that coincides with improved confidence. If you can listen to your gut and tap into, how do I learn that? And then how do I make the decision that is in alignment of my intuition? And for a lot of people, your intuition is very close in alignment to your core values also. Your intuition and your core values, very rarely are they not stacked together, right? Your intuition it wants you to keep your core values. It wants you to be somebody who keeps their word and who is who they say they are. They want to be in alignment. So if you go back to your intuition, you go back to your gut and you think about, well, what decision did it want me to make? It probably wanted you to make the right decision, which, if we go all the way back, was probably the uncomfortable decision, right? The uncomfortable decision and the right decision are often very much the same.
Can you talk a little bit about what you mean by core values?
Yeah, like core values of what's important to you and the things that matter to you, the things that you will wave the flag for, as I like to put a visual to it, is like, what are the things that I'm going to plant the flag and defend and be like, hey, these are things that are very important to me. And to give an example that people can probably relate to is, I've dated a lot of women who were not, I didn't think were aligning with my core values from a standpoint of I didn't want to marry them, right? There's a big difference in, hey, we have great connection or we have great chemistry or we get along really well, compared to this is how I want to live my life. This is how I plan to raise my children. This is how, these are the things that I am willing to fight for. Even core values around money. This is what I value when it comes to money. This is what I don't value with money. This is what I value when it comes to friendship. These are the friends that I will do anything for. People who live in alignment, who do or say these type of things are not people that I necessarily want to associate with. That's what I mean by core values. Core values of what is my character and what are the things that are very important to me as a human being. So I think it's important to, companies have core values, and then sometimes they're on the wall places, but like nobody really knows who they are. I think it's important to kind of understand, like, hey, what are the things that are really important to you? Are you living in alignment with them? And I also believe that if we're following that path, that'll also lead you to the passions and the projects and the success that actually you do want to chase, which, let's circle back to the beginning of our conversation. Where do we find fulfillment? When we're chasing and we're in progress with things that we also are very passionate about that align with who we want to be.
You just reminded me of a funny story, Brett. I remember an ex-girlfriend, and on our very first date, she made it a point to tell me how she was just over the drinking and that kind of partying lifestyle. And then several months into the relationship, we got into it because she was upset with me that I don't just want to take a Saturday and just get drunk with her all day. And I'm like, yeah, that's not really my core values, So
Yes.
what you said is actually great dating advice because, I can't speak for women, but I can definitely speak for men and my single friends. They're very superficial. They're just going for women they're attracted to. And if the ones that do want to settle down, have families, I always tell them you have to find a woman who shares those same core values. And I think you hit the nail on the head. You're not going to be able to grow together and build a family and a lifetime of happiness with someone who doesn't share the same alignment of what a great life looks like.
It is so much more important than looks, than even attraction. It's great to be attracted and all that stuff. And but when I, coming out of a previous relationship, it's funny you mentioned drinking, because the same thing. I had stopped drinking for a while, and it was really focusing on my business and growing these things. And I remember that I never judged anybody else for drinking. It wasn't a big deal, but we would go out to dinner, and the girl I was dating at the time wanted to have a glass of wine or wanted to drink, and if I didn't want to drink with her, it ruined her night. It ruined her dinner. And I was like, hold on a second. One of my core values is saying what I believe or doing what I believe and not letting somebody influence me. Right. It's like I am this person and this is important to me. Now, I am not judging you for doing what you want to do, but you can't allow that and influence me, because now we're out of alignment. Right now, like you're putting my core values at stake because I want to keep you happy and keep you in a good mood. So like that is not that's just not going to work. And I remember when I found my wife, there was like a couple moments that I just remember like saying something that I was like, hey, this could rub this person the wrong way, or this is going to be bold, and like she may not like this. And immediately it brought us closer together because they were her core values as well. And we synced very well. And it was like, hey, I got your back, you got my back. And you kind of know, when you are alignment with a lot of people, which is why that's such an important decision. I'm sure because nobody will have influence over your life more than your partner, right? The only person that has more influence over ourselves than ourselves is our intimate partner, because guess what? You share a lot of meals together, which mean your eating habits may be similar. You spend your time very similar. You are going to take trips together and you're going to spend money together. Like there's a lot of things that you need to be in alignment with. So weirdly enough, when I met my wife, I was kind of like, like an open book. And I was basically like, here's everything that's right with me. Here's everything that's wrong with me. Take it or leave it. Here are my core values. Do you like them or not? And she very much, like we synced really quickly together. I think because of that, because we weren't really trying to hide anything. So yes, very, very important decision. Everybody who says it's an important decision, it's even more important than that. Make sure that you are aligned on your core values, because you're never going to be able to grow together, like you said.
Yeah, they say that two biggest determinants of your happiness are who your partner is and what you do for work, right? Because that's the majority of your day. I was so lucky. You said that you were kind of open with her about like, this is me, if take it or leave it. You were very transparent with who you are and what you're about. With my wife and I, it was more of an attraction and a kind of a love story. And it was only later, as the relationship developed, that I found out that I was so lucky. I kept breathing a sigh of relief because we saw the world in the same way. And now it's very interesting. So we're raising our son in a very unique way. She studied early childhood development, and I spent a lifetime reading and learning and thinking about things. And so we now have this task of what is the approach we're going to raise our son with? And we are raising him with the opposite approach of my friend, who's incredibly successful and wealthy. And he's got a 2-year-old. He's already thinking of the path he wants his son to go in, and it's Ivy League and, associated with the elite of society. And I'm thinking, that's interesting, because I'm doing the opposite. I moved out of Chicago to be in the country, and my son is going to go to a very unique school where it's like a lot of outside play. And he basically right now, before he starts school, he'll stay up sometimes till midnight with us. Like, he lives a very deep, people think we're crazy, but he's never had any sugar through choice, not because of us. He just doesn't want to have it. He's outside doing things and being very active every single day. He has very minimal time on screens, and it's not because we don't let him, it's because he doesn't want to. And so it's almost like we're doing this experiment together, my wife and I, in raising this son. And it's very, very different in raising our son, very, very different to everyone else that we know who are parents. But I think there's a wonderful quote: it's no sign of health to be well adjusted to a profoundly sick society. And I think that's why we've just by complete luck, we have the same approach in raising a child that's very outside the norm, and we're aligned in that. So I think that's so interesting, because I didn't know that. I'm just completely. It's not like we bicker about it. We're just completely aligned in how we want to raise this boy.
I love that. And when you do decide to write your book, let me know, because I really want to read it, because I think everything you're doing with your son sounds fascinating. And I'm a big believer in, like, be careful being part of the norm, right? Or when somebody says like, oh, well, normal is this. I remember going for blood work once, and they were like, oh, well, you're, like for most 38-year-olds. And I was like, hold on. Like, don't compare me to most 38-year-olds. I want to be like, compare me to me, because most 38-year-olds are not like what I'm comparing myself to. So I think it's very important for those people. It's so easy, and back again to the uncomfortable either way. It's so comfortable to follow the norm, but most people follow the norm but want different. And if you're going to follow the norm, you can't expect results from something that you haven't done, right? You can't expect to live differently or live or get better than average results if you're doing the average. So it's a great reflection to look back on yourself and say, like, hey, where's the normal serving me? And again, better question, where is the normal not serving me? Where am I following the norm or fitting in with the norm where it is not serving the life that I want to live? And I really believe that the biggest thing that holds most people back is not their ability to learn. It's their ability to unlearn things they've been taught by people who don't have the life that they want. That could either be their friends, their circle, their environment, or it might be mom and dad. It might be brother, sister, or it might be the neighbors that you have. That's great if you have the same as them, but do they have the life that you want? And if they don't, maybe you shouldn't be following them or asking them for advice.
Brett, you just brought back a childhood memory of mine when I was probably 12 years old, and I'm in the house I grew up in the backyard with my dad. And he was explaining to me that he's a retired airline pilot, and you can fly a minimum amount of hours, or you can do overtime and fly the maximum amount of hours. And he was explaining to me that if he did the maximum, he would earn so much more money, but it would be time away from his family. And he'd rather, like, if he was doing that, he could pay for a landscaper, he could pay for this and that. He's like, I'd rather like mow my own grass and be with you outside and be enjoying the family. And I'm always going to work the minimum to spend as much time as I can with the family. And it was such a all these things, I'm getting these flashbacks of when I was a boy with my dad. Now I'm a dad with my son. And I always think, it's so the mind and memory are so funny. I always think if I never had him, I probably would never even have these memories surface. But I realize how lucky I am that my dad gave me so much wisdom in the way he lived his life. He's 76 years old, and every summer he goes to the south of France and he hikes across the Pyrenees or the Alps mountains for a few months while his wife, my mom, waits for him in the south of France. And it's like, he still does that at 76. That's not normal. But for me, that's normal because I've seen him doing all these crazy things together. We hiked Mount Rainier together a few years ago. Like, that's just normal for me to be fit and active and healthy in your late 70s. So these are just things I'm realizing now, that I'm so blessed to have that. And I didn't realize that was so unusual until more recently.
Yeah, I'm sure there are a lot of people listening who are like, that is not normal, for what maybe they grew up in. And this is not a sign. I'll talk about this sometimes when I do keynote speeches. And this is not, I'm not recommending you go call up mom and dad and say like, my normal is broken and I can't believe you made me think this way, or this is why I think about money. Like, this is not to go blame people, but it is to reflect and ask yourself, because I remember growing up and my dad unfortunately passed away very quickly when I was 16. And I saw my mom go through a lot of financial struggles. And so for me growing up, money was this evil thing that caused us stress. And it was like, the rich people were mean and evil, or must have been. And like, we were this. And I knew that like when I got to like mid to late 20s, I realized I need to change my money mindset. I need to change my relationship with money and how I view it and how I think about it and how I attract it and how I spend it and how I say. I needed to change all of that if I wanted to live a different lifestyle, because I always said I want a different. I don't want money to be this stressor on us. I don't want to live life based upon paycheck. And for years, I was very much following in the same steps, and money was this stress for me and how I was going to pay rent and all this. And I said, I need to unlearn that. And it's not that I am mad at my parents. They did the best they could. They did everything they possibly could to set me up for success. But I realized if I wanted to live a different lifestyle, I had to unlearn some of the money things that I learned growing up. And I had to start learning from a different blueprint. I had to act differently. I had to spend differently. I had to invest differently. I had to learn things that maybe I was never taught. So I think for a lot of people, everybody in their life has this "I can't" statement. I can't because, right? I can't do what you do, Lawrence, because my family this, but I can't because of my genes, or I can't because I live XYZ. I can't because of my knee injury, whatever it may be. I think everybody has an "I can't" in their life. And for me, it can very easily become the anchor that keeps you from doing anything special in your life, because you've identified, back to what we said, you identify as the person who can't. You identify that there is this excuse that you cannot overcome. But I think the shift between "I can't" and "I can't afford not to" could be one of the most powerful shifts that somebody makes in their life. If they go from "I can't," and with money, for me, it was "I can't, I can't be, I'm not good with money. I'm not good with money." And eventually I have to say, I can't afford not to be good with money. I can't afford not to invest in learning. I can't afford not to start reading some books. I can't afford not to start listening to some podcasts, because if not, I am going to put my family at the exact same situation that potentially, that I had to live through. So I think that shift between "I can't" and "I can't afford not to" could be one of the most powerful things that somebody does with their life. And instead of an anchor of why you can't, it becomes your North Star to why you have to do something, or because of why you need to, because you're changing again the trajectory of potentially you and your family and your legacy.
That is so true. It doesn't matter how great your childhood is. We all have these icons that are in our subconscious based on when we were young, based on what people told us. And I agree. Like my parents, I remember my dad telling me I complained about something when I was a teenager. And he said, "Lawrence, I did the best I could as a young father." He was a young dad when he had my brother and I. He's like, "I did the best I could. And, there's no manual for raising kids." And I never forget that, because now I'm in the same boat. And it's one thing I've noticed with some of my most successful friends, a lot of them, because I work in real estate, a lot of them are developers that, one was born in Romania, one was born in Mexico, one was born in Georgia, and they all came here as immigrants, and they're incredibly successful. And they tell me I had so much drive coming here. You know, I was bullied in school. English was my second language. I didn't know anything. Culturally, I was so different. And they rose above it all through just hard work. And now they're so successful. And they all have children now. And their big worry is, how do I raise my kids? I don't, they're getting the comforts and the fruits of my labor, but now I'm worried they're going to have an easy life and they're not going to have the drive that I had. And I had this, just talking about doing uncomfortable things. I had this beautiful moment last week at the beach. My son has his like beach toys are in this little beach car with four wheels and a handle. So he's like, Daddy, I want to go all the way to the other side of the beach. And I'm like, okay. And he just goes off by himself, pulling this thing. And it's got a bunch of rocks in it, it's real heavy. We go all the way to the end. And then he's playing for 5, 10 minutes. And he's like, okay, Dad, let's go back. And I'm like, okay. And he's like, oh, I can't carry it. It's too heavy. And I remember he's like, Daddy, pull it for me. And I said, listen, we can get it. We're going to be in the beach tomorrow afternoon. We'll pick it up tomorrow if you can't take it. Otherwise, let's try. You know, you can try. I know we could, but he was just tired. So he's like kind of going back and forth. Then he's pulling for a bit. Then he's complaining. Then he's pulling a bit more. And this older guy walks past us and he hears me talking to him. And he said, that was really good parenting. He can do it. And you're like making him push himself, but you're being nice about it. You're not yelling at him. You're giving him options and choices and letting him decide on his own. And I was like, oh, that made me feel really good. I was like, oh, my parenting is appreciated by the random old guy walking past on the beach. Then he ends up pulling it all the way. And then the last 5 meters, he's like, I'm so tired. And I pull it for him. And I'm like, this is really heavy. I was really impressed. But it's those little things that I'm trying to give him. I didn't even realize I was doing it. It was just, I guess, the philosophy. That's why I think I said we're kindred spirits. I really believe in that philosophy of just doing hard things. And I want to teach him that at a very young age. And it's a very difficult thing for successful people, but you can still figure out ways to give hardship. He can live in a nice house. He can go on nice vacations, but I can expose him to hardship in little things like that, like in sports, like in these little challenges. And he'll get that mindset that he can do the uncomfortable things and it's going to, lead to a more fulfilling life. So I just wanted to share that story because we are so aligned in that philosophy, and you've helped so many people with your coaching and your speaking and now with your book. But you're gonna have that same philosophy now for your son, which is so cool. Because like my dad said, there is no manual for raising kids, and it's really tricky in this day and age. I feel like we as parents have so much more challenges than any other generation with the pull and the ease of just shutting a kid up with technology. It is so easy to do. And my wife and I are not perfect. When we want to have dinner and he's been a monkey, he gets his screen for a few hours and we can have a nice dinner. We're not perfect, but it's so easy to do. And it's just not good for their brains, So I just love this philosophy, not just for parenting, but for us, the way we live our life. I just think it's incredible. And kudos to you for writing an incredible book and sharing the message that I don't think there's a person that can't benefit from that message.
Thank you, Lawrence. I really appreciate that. And I appreciate the stories. The stories are super motivating for me. And I can listen to all the dad stories. You got more you want to share, you call me up and I'm happy to listen, man, because they're right in my alley right now. And yeah, you nailed it. You nailed it. I think everybody would, I think it was Alex Hermosi or somebody had said like, hey, if you were creating a human being and you wanted to give them resilience, you probably wouldn't give them a very easy life, right? If you wanted to give them confidence, you probably wouldn't give them everything. You'd probably have them overcome some challenges. So it's this idea that we understand that we need those things to get to the other things. But that's why, I love the embracing discomfort. And it doesn't mean you have to put yourself through pain, but sometimes there's a little bit of discomfort that we have to put ourselves through. And what you did there with your son was awesome, of like, hey, the discomfort of dragging that thing back. And that's where he gains confidence that I can do it. And I'm being, proud of himself and doing those things. And I think so often the things that we were taught as a kid or how we treat kids as a society is exactly what we still need as adults. And we lose that. Like when a kid falls down, we all cheer and we're like, oh, you got back up. This is amazing. And but now as an adult, like somebody falls and you're like, oh, it's okay. Stay down. You're fine. Like, don't worry about getting it. It's like, hold on a second. The same way that we used to cheer on failure as a kid to help them improve, in the same way we would, cheer on a kid for confidence, is the same thing as an adult. We just lose the fact that like, hey, somewhere along the lines, we failed and we got yelled at for it, probably school, but somewhere along the line, we weren't perfect and we got in trouble for it. And now all of a sudden that's what we judge ourselves against. So I do think that, I'm excited to be a parent for multiple reasons, but one of them is I'm excited to kind of live life through, a new perspective again, and see things through my son's eyes for the first times. And like, I'm really excited for all that. And I also think there are so many lessons that we do to little kids that we lose along the way as adults that I'm kind of excited to just learn from a, whether it's a life perspective or, confidence perspective, whatever it is. And I'm sure it'll be in my teachings and my speaking. Like, I'll have all these new stories that I can't wait for. So I appreciate you sharing some of yours with me.
That's beautiful. Well, I will have to do part two, and I'll talk about we can talk about how your parenting journey is going and how you're dealing with the lack of sleep. But I'll put a link to your book and your Instagram, and I'll give you the last word, maybe how people can get hold of you. And I can't wait to read it, and I know I'm going to absolutely love it.
Thank you, Lawrence. I first of all, I just want to acknowledge you, man. I love what you're doing here, and you put such great content out there. And I think you share such a unique and vulnerable perspective that is so refreshing to hear. Right? Getting to learn more about you before we did this is like, it's so nice that it's not just like I have all the answers. You share through stories, you share through failure, you share through challenges, and I really have a ton of respect for that. So, thank you. I appreciate you having me on. Yeah, I'm really excited about the book. I spent 2 years writing it and put blood, sweat, tears, all of it in there. And it shares kind of a little bit of my story, all the way back to when I was 16 and kind of how I got to where I am and all the failures and mistakes that I made. But there's a lot of tough love in there, but at the same time, there's a lot of encouragement and a lot of strategy. And at the end of every chapter, there are 2 action items, one that you can do before you even turn the page. It should take you less than 30 seconds, and one that you can do within 24 hours. So over the course of the book, you're taking this action. And I've always joked that, I don't want to write a motivational book. I want to write a momentum book. I want to write a book that helps people build legit momentum in their life. So that's my hope. And when you get to the end of the book, you will have already done a lot of things to build some momentum in your life. So it's not like, oh, good, I read this. Now what? Hopefully you're already feeling the momentum.
Oh, beautiful. Thank you so much, Brett. I really do appreciate you.